Hello, this is a response to my noon suggestion that the EU could declare neutrality in the currency war between the United States and China. I actually do agree with this, but the EU would have to be much larger than it is at present, because the EU would have to either sign or include Russia in such a union to achieve the natural resources that the EU needs. Now, China is trying to woo Russia and to stay in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, but also we must look to Africa, because Africa is and South America as well. Um, South America wasn't in the title, but South America is an important partner for the EU, and of course South America has many infrastructural projects which will bring it into the first world much quicker than Africa. Africa has several problems. That's in East Africa especially, and Central Africa. Central Africa is experiencing a dark age, a age where there is cannibalism, there is muti killings as there are in South Africa. We must have an independent Boer republic, which is a democratic partner for the EU, in a South African Union, and there must be an East African Union to get the Chinese out of Africa. 11 people in Zimbabwe were killed by a Chinese foreman with an AK-47 this week. Those murders should not go unpunished. The Chinese are combining communism with colonialism, and this is causing the end of the so-called honeymoon between Africa and China. Now, the Africans are beginning to see that the Chinese are colonial masters rather than they're simply to help in some altruistic exercise. The EU needs to build democratic structures in Africa. It needs to bring the Africans into the first world, into the 21st century, because at the moment Africa is going backwards. Now, it needs to do the same with Russia, because Russia has moved on greatly in economic terms, but its political and rule of law system is way behind. Over a quarter of the Russian economy is still in the hands of the Russian mafia. But the EU could have linked currencies with all the African nations that are in these North Africa, East Africa and South African unions, such as a Boer Rand, and also have a link with the ruble. Now, this would mean that the union would be large enough to sustain the EU and those countries, because they would get first world EU capital goods such as machine tools and factories to produce all that they needed to do to get first world status. The United States, on the other hand, is threatened to take the EU's gold, which 66% of Germany's gold is in the New York Federal Reserve building. This would mean that the EU would be basically being screwed over by the Americans. Now, why the Americans are doing this, I don't know, but mine describe them as twats, and that is what I would describe them as. But I do not believe it's the entire American nation that is doing this. It is a clique of individuals commonly known as neocons and Israeli firsters in the Federal Reserve system, and also America firsters among the conservative and Clintonite right and left that is doing this. We need to be able to create a Middle Eastern union as well to fight the Bin Ladens and the Saudis. But overall, can the EU declare neutrality with all these threats? Well, the EU is all about trade, but it doesn't mean that there is a limit to trade, even if you have neutrality. The Swiss have neutrality and trade with everyone and have a thriving banking industry. The EU also has reserves of uranium, gold, silver, coal, oil, and also with its partners would would be more than a quarter of the world's surface. If you include Canada in some sort of partnership with the EU, that is even more of the world's land. And furthermore, the EU has been using incrementalism to try and overcome the problems of enmity between China, the United States, and Europe. But it's an interesting subject, neutrality, because it gives the EU the ability to effectively close itself off from threats, while it does all the nice things that the EU is very strong at, the soft power options such as aid, political dialogue, and it would give the EU as a neutral partner to every other country a position as the arbitrator of any dispute between the United States and China. So therefore I believe neutrality could be a very good thing for the EU. It's something that could be looked at in the longer term, when all these other problems such as the Bin Ladens, the Saudis, crime families are dealt with, and the reasonable, rational people can be brought to the table and speak about the problems. The Federal Reserve will have to go, and there will have to be a new US central bank. That's another problem that will have to be solved. But all these problems are not insurmountable. Neutrality is possible for even large groups and unions of countries. It can in effect mean, because of there is 60% of the world's currency in EU as euros, that in effect there could be two reserve currencies operating in the world simultaneously, because there could be one dependent on clean energy for the EU, Russia and Africa and South America, and the Middle Eastern Union as well, and while the United States would stay on an oil stock, petrodollar, with the North American Union. This is quite possible, and the relationship between China and the United States might continue, and this is what I talked about in my Europe and Russia video and my Europe and China video, where the drawing of the United States towards China and the drawing of the EU towards Russia is quite possible outcome of all of these talks. And let's see what the summit says between the EU and China and the US and China, and I'll give you further details. Thank you for listening.